Okay, so on to some scripting stuff. First thing you're going to want before you even bother with any of this stuff is to get Visual Studio Code. Obviously, it's free. You could download it. Just Google that real quick and download that. It'll make things a lot easier. You could do it in Notepad, but I'd highly recommend using Visual Studio Code. It'll make your life easier for certain things that I'm going to show here in a little bit. But anyway, after you do that, you're going to want to go over here and you're going to want to get this treyarch GSC extension. You'll probably have to type it in because I already have it. It shows up in here. And I would recommend getting Rainbow CSV for later. That's not going to be something we're going to need in this tutorial, really, but get that because it helps with CSVs for when you're doing audio and stuff like that. Um, you'll be able to tell what line or what comma, you know, um, is for what because it makes them different colors. So yeah, that's a pretty useful one too. Um, but yeah, those are really the two that you're gonna need the most. And you could get this one too, Black Ops 3 GSC. I'd recommend getting that as well, but really, this should be all you need. This works for World at War, Black Ops 1, and Black Ops 3. This, I guess, just adds in support for Black Ops 3 stuff. Um, Honestly, don't even remember installing that one. But anyway, yeah. So maybe get Black Ops 3 GSC, get Treyarch GSC, and get the Rainbow CSV. Um, so those are going to be three things that you'll need. That won't take long to install those. Um, but yeah, you may have some issues with trusted blah 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 when you go to open up a script or whatever. You may have to change some settings for that. I forget how to do that because I had some annoyances with that when I first installed Visual Studio Code because it wants to think that everything's like malicious or something, and it's really annoying. But yeah. So what we're going to be covering today is going to be like modifying existing scripts, like Treyarch scripts. Um, and this seems to be something a lot of people have trouble with, and I even had trouble with it at first myself. Mostly because there's dependency chains, which we're going to get into. So we're going to cover like how you can how you can modify these scripts, all that stuff. So like how you can modify like zombies mode scripts and the dependency chain for the zombies mode scripts, or at least the bare minimum. This is going to be the bare minimum you need to get stuff working properly um, with your scripts. We're going to cover how to include those scripts and all that stuff. So we're going to be covering hashtag using, hashtag namespace, the .zone file for your map, and the scripts that we're going to be modifying, which we're not going to do any modding. I'm just going to show you how you could set this up so you could start modding um, the existing scripts. So first things first, after doing getting all that ready, if you need help with some of the scripting, inside of your mod tools, they have this mod docs folder, this docs mod tools folder, and this gives you all kinds of stuff. Like over here, I'll drag this over. We have like the scripting API. So like this is all the different functions that are available to you from the engine level that you shouldn't need to call other scripts for. In some case you may. I'm not really sure. I haven't ran into any issues with it yet, but I know in World at War there was times you'd have to call a specific script to get certain functions. World at War was more messy. This seems more streamlined, even though it was a little more difficult to get me started with it because they changed a lot of stuff. So anyway, yeah, that's one of the first things you're probably going to want to start looking at, so you can figure out what you have at your disposal. But I wouldn't worry too much about that, but just know this stuff's here. Okay, so that'll help with that stuff. Anyway, So first things first, dependency chain. So if you're going to want to modify anything related to zombies mode, you're going to want to go into share raw scripts ZM. This is where all your zombies mode scripts are going to be. And I already have the ones open that we're going to need. And they're these ones here. So there's 5 of them right here. And you definitely need all of these at least, because if you modify, say, under slash ZM, which handles all the main zombies mode stuff, uh, you're gonna have dependency chain issues. Say you get it working and it's your script is being recognized and whatnot, compiled and everything. If you didn't change the calls in all these other scripts to work with this version of the script that you modified, then it's just going to be using these default scripts. So it's going to be using the default behavior, and that'll be really annoying. And yeah, anyway. So, but yeah, that's the first thing you're going to want to do. Get those scripts out of there. So you're going to need ZM under slash user map under slash ZM under slash utility, zombie under slash utility, under slash load.gsc, and under slash dot zm. Those are going to be the ones that you're really going to need. This is the bare minimum you're going to need to start making modifications to under slash gm or zm, because these there's a dependency chain in all of these. This one makes calls out to this one and blah 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 and all that stuff. So yeah, you're going to have to modify basically all them scripts. Even if you don't touch anything in all the other scripts and only touch under slash ZM, you're still going to need to make sure that you have your own versions of these scripts, because some things may not work right. So just make sure that you copy these out. And what I've done is I copied them. So we'll go back in there real quick. And I'll show you a little trick here, in case you weren't aware. So, you want under slash load GSC, right? And you want, I don't know, let's see, let's just pick one. It doesn't really matter. Under slash last stand. So you could, control and select these. And, you'll see it's just selecting, highlighting the ones I want. And then you could just copy and then, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So then we'll go back out here and we'll go into user maps and we'll go into my map, and you'll see that in my scripts here, I've got a folder called treyarch scripts, and this is all the, scripts that I'm going to be leveraging as of right now. I'm going to be changing more, and then you see I got a folder in here called perks. This is just all the perk scripts. And you could see how that's going to get pretty messy when I start messing with those, because there's so many scripts and they're all going to be dependent on each other. So, but we're not worried about those today. What we're worried about is the ones that I'm talking about here. We're just going to mess with the GSCs. We're not going to worry about CSC or anything like that for now. The GSC is the server side. So this is like the server, it runs everything, right? So messing with these will change the behavior across the board. But the CSC is for client side. So that's for like the individual clients. You don't really have to mess with those too much, but I mean, it's still recommended that you do eventually. Um, I don't know too much about CSC myself yet, because World at War didn't have that. It was all GSC. So, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, you get your folders set up and you put your scripts in there, and depending on what you're trying to do. Now, as you see here in my main script, you see we got ZM under slash user map under slash T. We're going to get into that here. So when you copy these scripts over, what you're going to want to do is, the first thing you're going to want to do is go into the file and then go down to where it says hash namespace. And you're going to want to change this. So normally this would be ZM under slash user map. I added under slash T. for Trey. But that means that I modified it. This is my version of the script. It's mostly treyarch code, but there's modifications to it that aren't, you know, whatever you want to call it, default. They're outside of the default behavior. So yeah, that's why I said you want to copy the script. So you're going to want to change this to some. You could change this to whatever you want. You could do / whatever, you know, or just change the name entirely. But make sure it's something you remember. I recommend just leaving the name default and / maybe a letter or / a word, whatever you want, to make it easier for you. But just make sure that whatever you do to it, you remember that. So you're going to want to do that. And you're going to want to do that for all of these scripts. So, across the board. Now, I'm not at the top of all my scripts, but as you see, like here, I did the same thing for load and all that. So, yeah, you're going to want to make sure, because see, these here are, this is calling out to the namespace. So namespace, and then this is the function it's calling. So if you don't do that, and say you just had / utility, it might work, but we'll get into that. There's caveats with that. So like, make sure you change those, and then whenever you're calling those scripts, so that's another thing. When you're going to be using those scripts, you're going to want to change your usings for those particular scripts. Like you see / load here, I'm calling my version of it. You're going to want to change this to point to the location of where you put it. That's why I say make a folder and don't just put it in ZM, because then it's going to assume it's using the default one. For the using at least. So you might get a compiler error whenever you try and compile your map. So do like I did, maybe put treyarch scripts or whatever you want to name the folder. I don't know, fucking, stock bullshit, whatever. Whatever you name the folder's fine. Just make sure that, again, it's like something, if you're going to name it like I did, it has to have /. It can't be space or any of that. So it has to be, like in my case, treyarch / scripts. It couldn't be treyarch space scripts. It's not, that doesn't work. So yeah, you can't do that. But anyway, so yeah, you'll set these up. As you see, I've got a couple of them right here. It's calling out to my version of the scripts instead of the stock default ones. So this is locating where it's at. This tells it where it is using that script, and it's pointing it to the location of that script. All right. And with the namespace, which in this case there's no namespace in this file because this is the main GSC for the map. But as you can see in here, I have a namespace for my utility script. This is one that I made. I wrote all of this stuff. None of this is treyarch bullshit. This is my own custom script. But you'll see that we're calling out to this namespace here. And the reason I don't have this set to my version of the GSC is because that's not really important for this script. Really, I don't even know that I need any of these usings. I just left them. That's the stock way it's set up when you... well, this was... when I created this script, I don't remember what script I copied to create it. I just copy and pasted one, deleted everything, and started a new script with it. So I don't remember which one I used. But yeah, this was just the stuff that was already in there. So I might not necessarily need any of this. I really haven't bothered messing with it to figure out what I do need. But I'm pretty sure ZM is needed. Anyway, so yeah, you'll go ahead and you'll start by renaming your script namespaces and making sure that in all of these scripts you want to go through and see if it's using any of the scripts. So see here, I had to change that to my version, the same here, and just go down the list and check all of these and make sure that you're calling the right version of the script. Okay, so now that you've got that stuff sorted out, you're going to need to come over to your zone file, and you're going to have to add in, copy and paste one of these lines. You'll have one of these by default. Like, you'll have this here. So you're going to want to copy and paste this line and do the same thing. Add the script tree and then give it the location of the script for all those scripts. Because if you don't do this and save this, then you'll also get a compiler error because it will complain that it can't find the scripts, even if you have them included and the namespaces are right and all that. So set all that up first before you do any modifications or anything. And then for making this easier, once you set up, because see, you know, throughout here, you're going to see a lot of this. So what I'd recommend doing is you're going to do find and replace. So in this case, we're going to use the example that I've got there, zombie / utility / t. And you'll copy this into here. And in your case, when you're going to change these namespaces to match, it'll look like this. So you're going to want to change it from that to this. So it's going to, you know, see how it's highlighting all that? You're going to want to just, and then you click that button, and then it'll do that. So I don't need to do that because I've already done that stuff, but you'll do that for every call for all of these. So for every namespace, you're going to want to do that. Yeah, so that's how you're going to want to change that. And I forget which script it's in. I think it's this one maybe, or ZM maybe. I gotta figure out which one it's in. But there is one instance where you're not going to want to change that. It might be utility. I'm trying to figure out which instance that's in. I know it's up here near the top somewhere. Yeah, it's not that script. It's probably user map. It's definitely, it's load something. I can't remember what it was. It's load like art something. But you don't want to change that because that breaks stuff. I'm trying to find it. Sorry, I should have left that example up. Here it is right here. So this one here, you're not going to want to change to / whatever you name that namespace. You're going to want to leave this one alone. So leave that one alone or it breaks stuff. So that's one you don't want to change. All other instances of that is fine to find and replace. So when you do the find and replace, like, so you do like load, what you're going to be looking for is this, and you're going to want to do like, that's what you're going to want. Now see, that's the only one left because I already changed all the rest. So you'll want to find that level thread and then the art review, and then make sure you just unselect that one and then do the replace. That way then it doesn't change that one because it will break stuff. You'll get compiler error and it just won't work. So all that's set up now. That's basically the gist of it. You change your namespaces. You change the calls to the functions at the top to call out to your versions of the scripts so it knows where you're at. That's another thing too. This script here in /ZM, comment this line out. That's something I forgot to mention. Comment out this line or you'll get a compiler error. I don't know what this script is. It doesn't exist in ZM anywhere. So I'm not sure what it is. I think it's a blackboard, which like I guess is like holds stats or something. I don't know. That's usually what blackboards do. Um, in most games, like in Cyberpunk, they have a blackboard system that kind of does the same thing. It holds like stats and shit. But for whatever reason, it'll give you a compiler error if you leave that. By default, it'll look like this when you copy the script. So yeah, just comment that out, and you'll be fine. Everything else should be fine. This is already commented out by default. I don't know why, but just leave it like that. But this one here, this /BB, make sure that that's commented out. You don't need that. It'll cause you headaches. So now you've gotten all these scripts, the dependencies all set up. You've gotten everything added in here. Make sure you add each and every script that you're modifying into here. You have to do that or it's just not going to work. Now you can finally get to the fun part. So like, let's say you wanted to like change round stuff or whatever. So like, we'll get rid of that. We'll get rid of that. And we'll get rid of that. We need just ZM. So now this is a very broad. This is pretty broad. So like, let's see, where's it at? So yeah, there's a lot of round stuff. So we're gonna need to find a round function, which there's a lot of crap in here, so you will be looking for a little bit, but yeah, somewhere down in there. We don't need this script, we don't need that script, so this will make it a little easier. There's less stuff to look through, but yeah, this is a slow process, but you are going to have to look through this to figure out where stuff is. So, like, I don't know, we could skip down to this. But somewhere around here is, like, round function. So, like, I think it's, like, round start or something like that. Let's see. Function round start. There we go. Okay. So for round start, this is all the stuff that happens during the start of a round. So you're probably not going to want to mess with that one. But like, for instance, round over, there's, you could change stuff in here. If you wanted to, there's one that I wanted to show, like, I think it's, function, game over, death. So, like, I'm trying to find the specific thing I was looking for. I think it's like game over, maybe HUD, I don't know. That's annoying. Let's see, what's the name of this function? Stop all rumbles. Okay, that's the one. So this handles like your game over HUD. So like, say you wanted to change what it says at the end. So this is a reference to a script string. So say you wanted this to say something else, you could remove this ampersand here because that means it's a reference, and it's referencing localized script strings, which is the same as it was in World at War. You can go and edit that file, but for simplicity's sake, say you wanted to just change what it said on the game over screen, you could just go in here and you can, like I said, you'll have to remove this first, but you could set the text directly right here if you wanted to, just for testing, like, you know. Haha, fuck you, you know, because you died, whatever. So, yeah, you could change that and then like the number of rounds survived and all that. Um, and then here, this is technically wrong. This has been wrong since World at War, so this would be -1. So round number -1. Because you didn't, say you died round 1, you didn't survive 1 round, you survived 0 rounds. So, you know, you didn't survive the round, you died during the round. So, that's technically, that's something that's been needed fixed since World at War. And they haven't fixed it. I don't think they actually fixed it in Black Ops 3. I don't pay attention to that screen anymore, so like I really don't know. I don't think they did though. And judging by the code, they didn't. Because this should be, like I said, this should be round number -1. That's actually the correct number of rounds that you survived. So yeah, that's something that is incorrect. But yeah, digging through the code here, yeah, there's nothing. So like game over, survived, all that shit. Um, yeah, so that should be -1. Um, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, this is how you would change like the screen and the sound effects that play at the end. Let's see, that's somewhere in here, I believe. Let's see. Let's make sure we're still in this function. So, should be like, no, they were calling that. Okay. That's checking something. Um, here shit, where are we at? Where are we at? Trying to find I don't think they do it the same way they do it in World at War, which is kind of what I'm looking for. But there's like they call like a sound function to play the sound for the end. That might actually be up here some fucking where for all I know. Um, or it might be calling a function to play the like game over music. It might just be calling a completely different function. Yeah, like this might be something like that. Or it could be in here. It could be calling that. But this is where you would find all that stuff. So this is where you would get into tracing what does what, what functions, go through the code, figure out what the code's doing, and then leverage it to do what you want. So like there's game over spectators and all that shit. You could change any of this however you want. I believe this one here I didn't really change a lot in. Mostly just changes to like like calling to my scripts. I think a lot of my code changes were in here like yeah, like the set zombie run cycle. I commented all of this out. So it's basically just gonna, at the end, it's just gonna call this, and then it's gonna do this stuff. And that makes them, this is to make them all sprint, which I still get some walkers sometimes, and I'm not quite sure why, but, in World at War, this kind of same method worked because the function's exactly the same as in World at War. It literally is like line for line. This change zombie run cycle shit. This is literally line for line. This wasn't in World at War, but yeah, this is exactly the same. It might have something to do with this watcher, maybe. Um, I don't know. And the fact that I'm spawning in more zombies than normal. So there's that too. But yeah, that's how you would go about getting this set up. And these are probably the main ones you're going to be messing with for like zombie mode stuff. For the main zombie mode functionality. Like if you want to get into AI, then you're going to have to trace. I haven't done none of that yet, so I don't have any examples of like dependency chains for that. I just have the dependency chain for the bare minimum to mess with the zombies mode itself, which is these 5 scripts. You have to edit at least these 5 because they all have calls to each other, and you know, eventually you're probably going to make changes to all of them anyway. So just set it all up from the beginning, and you won't have any issues. And like I said, if you don't do that anyway, then say you called this function or this script, it's probably not going to work anyway because it's calling default functionality for other shit. Um, so yeah, if there's any, you probably could get away with just adding this in if you make sure you've folded it correctly and all that shit. But I don't know. It's easiest just to do all of these. Just make sure you have them all and edit them all, and then you can make changes to. This pretty much handles everything in zombies mode between these 5 scripts. Just about everything, except for AI and like perks and all that stuff. It doesn't handle any of that. Those are their own scripts, but you know. Um. Anyway, yeah, that's about it for this. But yeah, it's a little bit rambly, but it was hard to get examples going for this. But I tried to set everything up ahead of time. But yeah, that's all you'll really need to get it going. You'll need your .zone file, your maps file, because you're gonna have to make those changes in here too for, like I said, calling your version of the scripts. Um, this script's not needed. This is my personal script. CSV isn't needed. That's not needed. That's for sound alias stuff too. So these 2 are for sounds. You will eventually need those. That'll be future tutorial stuff. But yeah, you will need these 5 scripts. Um, just to make your life easier. Unless you want the headache of trying to figure out what's the, uh, why your scripts aren't compiling or working right. Or, like, for instance, I first started with just this. And I had it calling out to this script, and I made changes to it and all that shit. Um, I tried to change, like, something stupid that would be noticeable. Like, I think it was like the number of zombies per round, and it wasn't working. It compiled just fine, but it wasn't working, and that's because I didn't have it in the zone file, and at the time I had it in the ZM folder. You want to make a new folder if you're going to keep the name the same. You could change the name, instead of ZM, it could be like under slash ZM under slash something else, like custom or whatever. And then that would be fine. You could put it in ZM and just make sure again that you're calling that specific version of the script, like at the top here. So, ZM under slash custom, that kind of thing. And the same with the namespace. You want to make sure that the namespace doesn't have to match the script, by the way. You can name the namespace basically whatever you want. Like, as you see here, I named mine utility and then under slash T because it's mine. So, yeah, you could do that. you can name those pretty much however you want, but you want to make sure you avoid using, like, I didn't use utility because there is a shared script named just utility, and that would cause compiler issues. So be trying to call out to something that isn't right. Even though you pointed it to this, it still might give you some errors or it might just not work right. So try to avoid using names that already exist. That's why I do this, you know, um, /t at the end of all of my versions of scripts, just because it makes it a lot easier to know that this is my version and that's what it's calling. So I can see it's calling ZM /t instead of just ZM. So yeah, that's going to be the basics of setting this up. We'll get into advanced stuff later, um, and maybe explaining how to do specific things with these scripts. Um, like I said, I had no examples offhand. I was just showing you how to. I wanted to just show you how to set this up, so then you could start modifying them. The coding part's up to you for now until I get into tutorials and most of mine revolve around custom functionality and shit. Like doing all this shit. You know, yeah, over 1,000 lines of code in that, and that's just one script, and there's still more to be added. So more stuff I'm working on. So some of it's old commented out code too, like this stuff down here, but and then there's like reference code I stole from one of the treyarch scripts, and you know, there's like other garbage up here, like stuff I've found that I want to mess with or already have messed with and tested and all that shit. Um, so yeah, there's that kind of stuff. But yeah, anyway, I think that'll do it. Hopefully this helps somebody with getting started at least. Um, Watch out. I'll try and post stuff as I get more stuff done. Once I start messing with more treyarch scripts and changing stuff, I'll probably make tutorials on how to change it once I get it up and running for myself. And then, yeah, then I'll show you how you can go about changing different things like, perk behavior, or like I said, round end sounds, and like round round in messages, and we'll eventually get into the localized strings and how you can add your own localized strings into that file and all that. So then you can reference your own text instead of doing like I do here and just sticking a string directly in. So, yeah, we'll get into all that at a later time. But this should get you started, and that should be all you need to know. So, that's that.